tonight we will be delving into the world of stories that come from the middle of nowhere. If you're like me, these are some of my favorite stories because I can curl up in the suburbs and pretend that these things will never happen to me, but then these are the first stories you think of the second you go camping or on a road trip or anywhere where you feel isolated. So I hope you guys enjoy these stories. Again, it's a little bit of a shorter video than usual since I'm preparing for October, but I wanted to give you guys something to listen to in the meantime. So get ready, grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, snacks, whatever you need, and settle in, because we're about to embark on another journey into the night. I live in Russia, and my encounter happened around a year ago in February. I was walking by the embankment at 10 p.m. It was already dark, and nobody was around. There's a road which has 3 levels, a big street, and then it goes down to a smaller one, and finally, the embankment that turns into the small path through thick snow. Imagine that you are walking through an industrial area that barely has street lights, no people, and on your left there's a little forest, and on the right there's a river. So I was walking on the path when I saw a man. His whole appearance alarmed me instantly. He had skis on, but was trying to walk as he was without them. In the deep snow, it was around his knee level. I saw how much effort it took for him not to fall and keep moving. There is no way to avoid this person due to the tiny path that goes through the snow there, and it being the only path I had. And he was staring at me, smiling. Not sure if it was in a predatory way, but something was weird in that smile. I thought to myself, well, if anything happens, I can just push him over and run away, and I kept moving. When I was right next to him, this happened. Everything took only about 3 seconds. I was watching his every move with my side vision, and one moment he disappeared. There's nowhere to hide. The trees are 100 meters away, and hiding in the snow is not an option because you would be visible anyway. He was just gone. I slightly turned my head to that direction, and I captured something right behind me in my vision. A stick man. It was absolutely black, around my height, maybe a bit taller, a little over 6 foot. Very thin, but with a big head and no neck at all. It was standing in a very threatening position with its arms set apart like an animal preparing to attack. This figure looked like a picture had been printed straight onto the air. I thought that 2D objects should be material at some point, with the thickness of a sheet of paper, for example, but no, this looked entirely different. I turned my head away and started running to the second level of the road. When I got there, I looked back. This thing was peeking out of a tree when I spotted it. It got behind the tree and hid from me. At this point, I really thought that I was going to die, for sure. When I got to the 3rd level, some cars were driving nearby, so it calmed me down a little. I looked back again. The stick man was standing in the spot where I had been just seconds ago, right in the middle of the road. The whole landscape looked so unreal that at some point I questioned my sanity. This time I kept the contact and tried to examine this thing. The stick man was slightly moving back and forth, but its whole body had a very stable, black dark figure. And it also needs to be mentioned, the feeling that I got. I watched a video, and some people said that they had seen something similar, and they claimed to have a "you shouldn't be seeing this" sort of feeling. I got something like that as well. And the survival instincts were blurred, but my mind kept telling me to flee. Also, I had this feeling like you finally found me. Imagine when you play hide and seek and your cousin or sibling is very slow finding anybody, so you sit in your place for a long 20 minutes. At first you still feel the pleasure from the game, but later it gets boring. So when whoever's looking for you finally finds you, you feel some sort of relief. I think that something tried to stop me from walking away because at a certain point there was a little desire to approach this thing and become friends. I know it's weird. It was obvious that this thing was following me. And the thing is, I live very close to that place. I didn't know what to do, either wander the streets so it would lose me or go directly home, but this thing would know where I lived. I decided to run to safety immediately without looking back, and as you can imagine, that wasn't the end. That night, I had an episode of sleep paralysis. I remember laying in bed, listening to the sound of water from my aquarium, when it suddenly stopped. I thought somebody's trying to get my attention, so I opened my eyes. Right next to the bed, there was the same black figure. This was it, the end of my life. I literally saw my entire 17 years before my eyes. This figure just stood 3 feet away from me, and then it turned into a fog and started to fill my lungs through my nose and throat. When it was entirely inside my body, I woke up. Or maybe I had never been asleep at all, I don't know. The thing is, I haven't noticed any differences within myself since. The whole encounter was very different from anything I've ever seen in my life. There are things you've never experienced before, so you don't actually know what to think or feel, and you're filled with curiosity. Obviously, I'm low-key disturbed, because who wouldn't be? Would I find myself one day in the middle of nowhere, approaching a random person with the skis on, and disappearing in the next moment? Did that dream mean anything, or was it a dream at all? I barely remember that man's face, so it's pointless to search for lost people, I suppose. Is this thing inside me just waiting for something? Waiting to manifest? I really don't know what to think about this. My dad and uncle, who are both in their 60s now, are not the kind of people to believe in the paranormal. Not ever. But once we had this discussion going on about the scariest experiences, mostly jokes and whatnot. All of a sudden, they both recall this one time when they were about 15 to 18 years old. My dad is the younger one, back home in their country of Morocco. In the older days, there was this stupid game teenagers would play when they were in the countryside. They liked to prove that they were fearless and not children anymore. The game was to go into an abandoned and old graveyard. Muslims' graveyards are often creepy. And to go into the centerpiece, which was usually a small mausoleum where someone of great religious importance was buried, or just a small mosque, and light a candle. So my uncle's the one who will go into the graveyard, get into the small building, light the candle, and then leave to rejoin his group. My uncle easily gets through the graveyard, gets into the building, and lights the candle. As soon as he leaves the building, the candle is blown out. His group tells him to go back and light it again. The process starts back, and again, as soon as he leaves, the candle goes off. Now they are slowly getting creeped out, so they all go inside the building. They light the candle together, and they start looking around. What they see next scared the lights out of them. A person in full Moroccan men outerwear, called the jalaba, is sitting on a bench and looking at the ground. They couldn't see its face, and it had the hood on. Now, they haul ass and don't stop until they're very far away. My father and uncle never told anybody this story until that night when they were asked, and they still vehemently refuse to believe that it was anything paranormal. But from their tone, you can tell that for two very rational and logical men, they are still completely unsure of what they saw. What makes it even weirder is that the graveyard is located next to a village in the middle of nowhere, where everybody knew everybody else. and they had never seen the figure before, nor did they see him since. So in my late teens, I had this friend, let's call him Felix. Unlike my social anxiety-ridden self, he was a social butterfly and appeared to know everyone. As such, I ended up knowing a lot of people by proxy and hung out with some interesting folks. The one I'm going to talk about today is named Carly. I'm not 100% convinced, but she might be a real witch. I was at Felix's place one night with a few people, and we were all playing a game of Risk. We had smoked a bit and got to talking about some weird topics, compounded by the fact that we were weird teens. You know, the usual. My buddy had crazy stories about getting stuck in a radio tower. Another friend had stories about getting locked in a basement all night. I had my ghost stories, and it was one of the few times that people believed me, so that was nice. Carly had the one that we called bullshit on the most. Carly was your typical edgy goth girl, complete with clothes that would put a stripper to shame and enough makeup that it had a noticeable thickness. I mean, she was hot, I'll admit that, but we were distant friends and I had hung out with her a few times with Felix. She seemed nice enough, but a little emotionally reserved. Well, this night, she up and states that she's an energy vampire. Now, I had no idea what that was, and I didn't exactly have access to a lot of internet in rural Newfoundland. She goes on to say that she gets energy from people's emotions, she can feel people's auras, she can detect when people have issues, and she has to keep her emotions in check because she can get powerful. Me and Felix call bullshit, as we had never heard or seen her be powerful, and those kinds of claims reeked of falseness coming from the edgy goth kid. She goes on and does a reading where she's able to tell me about my emotions. I remember that she had rightly stated that I was depressed, but that wasn't much of a shocker to anyone who met teen me and told Felix that he had a grave injury impending. His mom did have a stroke like a year later, for what little that might be worth. She also said some other vague things to the rest of the people who were hanging out with us, which were probably correct. I can't confirm. Finally, after this had gone on for about an hour or so, I called her bluff. I asked where she got these mystical powers. I remember asking if her dad was a warlock and her mom was a pixie. She says she was taught by Mother Hilda, but that was the most bullshit name I had ever heard. And I said, where the hell does she live? In your head? Becoming visibly distressed, she said to me and Felix, who was laughing his butt off, that she could bring me to her next weekend. Thinking she would bring me to one of her weird goth friends who would try some edgy shit, and me always being down for a laugh, I of course said yes. Felix was down for it as well, so it was settled. Now, it's important to know that I have an issue with being a passenger in cars. I fall asleep almost immediately when I'm not driving, a holdover from long car trips with the family. I mean, I sleep immediately. If I can make it 5 minutes, it's a miracle. It's really important to remember this, because I sure as shit wish that it wasn't the case. So when the weekend comes, me, Felix, and Carly all get together to go meet this person. I had assumed it would be some person we would meet in the basement of their parents' house, but Carly says that Mother Hilda lives on the Bonavista Peninsula. That's a good 3-hour drive in good weather from where I lived, and I was frankly more pissed off that she didn't bring snacks than anything else. So we all get in her car. She had gotten her license already since she was 6 months older than us, and we set off. In my true fashion, I fell asleep within minutes, and I don't even think we hit the highway before I was completely out. When I woke up, we were driving on a dirt road, if you can call it that, in the absolute middle of nowhere. For those of you who haven't been to Newfoundland, I think my wife put the Bona Vista Peninsula best. She says, it's like you're walking on the graves of a million really pissed off ghosts. Gloomy skies, gloomy landscapes, and a real feeling that something is watching you from the tree line where you can't see them. I frankly hate the place. Most people I know from it are great, but everyone I know who lives on it is miserable. So, I come to and we're driving down this poor excuse for a road, and what could be more aptly named a goat path. So I immediately start complaining. Where the hell are we? Why are we here? What are you planning to do? You know, reasonable questions. To all of the questions she answered, Mother Hilda will answer, like a psychopath. Felix doesn't say a word and just looks mildly amused. So, after what felt like forever, we come to some sort of clearing. It's really just a place where the trees aren't that big, not a true clearing. In the middle sat an old-school Newfoundland box house in absolutely horrible condition. Like no one had shown this house a lick of love in 100 years run down. It still had windows, given, but the roof looked like it was attempting to threaten the ground with its lean. I remember the place was blue and the goat path didn't reach all the way up to it. It stopped about 100 feet shy, because of course it did. Carly stops the car, gets out, and like a psychopath says, Mother Hilda will answer. I look to Felix, who has the biggest grin on his face. This guy is high as a kite. I berate him, as this shit is horrifying, and his only real response getting out of the car is, You're a better man than me for doing this sober. So I get out of the car with Felix, who insists I go first. My only thought is, I am going to be murdered. Carly walks through the trees with her arms outstretched in a T-pose, spinning and singing, Mother Hilda knows all. Felix looks at me and says, We're getting fucking murdered, aren't we? I nod. Carly reaches the door, if you can call it that, opens it up, and motions for us to come in. Now, I saw two options. Either go in with the witchy woman or brave the untamed wilderness of rural Newfoundland in God knows where. I decide the latter, as that one has some chance that I die and no one finds the body. But I hadn't come all this way for nothing. I reach the door, and this place is pitch black inside. It was generally overcast outside, and the windows must have been covered in paper or something. No furnishings, no lighting, just rotting boards and the smell of my impending doom. I can hear Carly laughing upstairs, because of course there's an upstairs. So I think, yep, I die here. This is a murder house for her weird rituals. I can tell that Felix is thinking the same thing, but he insists that I go first. Thankfully, the stairs were next to the front door, so I didn't have to risk walking through that creepy place. When I look up at the stairs, I nearly pissed myself. At the top is a girl, butt-ass naked, and pointing down the upstairs hallway. She has makeup like Carly, thick and dark, and is staring at us with intent, possibly murderous eyes. I turn to look back at Felix when the girl at the top of the stairs belts out in a voice louder than I'd peg her to have, Mother Hilda doesn't have to wait. So petrified, I walk up those stairs. The place was eerily silent. I hadn't really noticed it before, but there was no sound of the wind in the trees, no birds chirping, no rustling, and no floorboard creaking. I started to really get those murder vibes coming on strong, but Felix flashed me a hunting knife he had brought along and whispered, I got you. We're leaving alive. Feeling exactly 0.1% better, I reached the top of the stairs. The girl, who was maybe 14, ran into a room on the upper floor, and I saw Carly at the end of the hall, next to a door, what I assumed to be a closet. She had the biggest grin on her face, like a proud child about to show their mom a Play-Doh figure they'd worked all day on. I walked closer, and with all the manly gusto I had in me, made it 5 steps into the hallway. I had the feeling that I was going to puke, and every fiber in my being was telling me whatever was behind that door was danger. Pure danger. Carly looked at me and said, "Mother Hilda will see you now," and opened that door. What was inside was what I believed to be a small child, but its back was turned to me and it was eating something in the closet. I remember seeing chicken bones at its feet, which were huge, by the way. It was wearing a ratty red shawl and was ass naked below the waist. And that's when I noticed that it was not a child, but a very old person. It had that typical saggy old person ass, you know, the one that lacks all tone and definition. I watched this thing turn around, and it was the scariest sight of my life. It was some kind of old woman, but I question that frequently given its appearance. It had tiny, tiny arms like an infant on a toddler's body that was holding her shawl up. It had wispy angelic strands barely holding on to its head, and a noticeable hump on its back. I assume I noticed this because its face didn't make any sense. It was just teeth. Just one big mouth with hundreds of misshapen teeth. The entire face looked like it had been scooped out and just given teeth. Rows upon rows of teeth. I saw no eyes, no nose, no forehead, just long, creepy teeth. It snarled and yelled, "No men!" and I passed out. When I woke up, I was back in Felix's house, him already up and staring at the floor with a 1,000-yard stare. I asked him if I had some kind of weird dream, and without missing a beat, he says, "Mother Hilda is real, man. I thought it was a creepy fake thing, but she's real. I saw it too." We talked for about 30 minutes about what happened, and we had basically the same recollection of events, except Felix saw her move a step or two before he blacked out. I said I should go home. He said I should leave. We both went our separate ways. Over the next few days, I tried to message Carly, back in the days of MSN Messenger, but the only response I ever got was, "Mother Hilda never forgets." About 3 days of this, and 10 messages a day, I said, fuck Carly. I didn't need that in my life. Never hung out with her again, although I did see her from time to time in school, but she refused to look at me. I had only one more encounter with Mother Hilda, whatever the hell she is, beyond that day. I had quite a big yard before the river and had a sizable fire pit where I would, have fires. Having Felix as my only real friend, I had many bonfires alone. That was fine. I enjoyed the spectacle of it all. So one night I was having a fire and I started to get really into it. The flames went maybe 15 feet high, and I was having a great time. I had whipped off my shirt, placed it on the 6-foot poking stick I had, and began chanting in gibberish. I don't know why, but it was a conscious action. Teenagers are weird, what can I say? On the other side of the fire, through a line of trees, was a small path my neighbor had to go to the woods. I catch a glance out of the corner of my eye, and there's something small in the trees. Thinking it could be a wild cat, or maybe a baby bear, I stop to look at it. From the other side of the line of trees, I see Mother Hilda, her gaping maw wide open and facing in my direction. I go to scream, as is the logical action, but Mother Hilda yells, "No!" and my raging inferno goes out. Not a single ember stayed lit. It was a cold, dead fire. I looked back. No Mother Hilda. I decided that was enough of that, and I booked it into my house as fast as my legs could carry me. When I get inside, my mom asks me why I'm not having the fire anymore. She rarely cared what I did, so I asked why she wanted to know. My mom said that, quote, the nice girl who wears a lot of black asked about me maybe 5 minutes ago at the front door. Mom had told her that I was having a fire, and she started to walk to the backyard. I go to my room, horrified, and message Carly on MSN to demand what the hell was going on. I shouldn't have gotten an answer, since she had just been at my door, right? But I did. All she said was, Mother Hilda likes you. I haven't really told anyone this story before now, as it's so outlandish even I wouldn't believe it, but my friend Felix still won't talk about it, and I just had to get it off my chest. I met him a while ago when I traveled back to Newfoundland and asked him if he remembered Carly and the creepy house. He just looked at me with dead eyes and said, Mother Hilda is real, man, don't fuck around, and walked away from me. I have yet to make sense of it, like a lot of things that have happened to me. Welcome back. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'm very sorry if you can hear the vacuuming in the background, but I'm trying to get through this outro before it gets too close. I know that there were only a few stories, but they were longer ones, and I thought they were super creepy, so I had to make this video for you guys. I'm trying to stick to a 3-video-a-week schedule between now and October 1st, and I have already recorded a bunch of stuff for October, so I hope you guys are as excited about Night Marathon as I am. I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button, leave me a comment if you'd like. If you're new here, why don't you join the Conspiracy of Ravens and hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to tick the bell so that you don't miss out on any of our journeys into the night. Thank you so much for being here. For those who are already subscribed, thank you for your support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.